Now that looks like a rifle.
Yeah.
I don't like these
New little ones.
shit they put on them.
Yeah.
What caliber is it?
That's a 30 caliber carbine. 30 caliber.
30?
Yeah.
I'm pretty outspoken, that's why a lot of people don't like me.
Paratroopers.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you had a rabbit or some squirrels, and we'd worked ourselves up to where we were raising some chickens, and we always had a big garden. And that's when the Barnum and Bailey Service had their winter quarters in Alpharetta, Indiana. And that winter they laid a lot of people off. Now the only people that kept were the people that took care of the animals. And even some of them went. The lion tamer, they didn't need him because he wouldn't take care of the animals. And so a lot of those people came to our house, and we almost always had a circle of people at our house on supper time because we had the chickens and the vegetable garden. So nobody was ever turned away that whole winter. That salt pork had in big boxes, and there'd be a layer of pork and about a 2-inch layer of salt. And before you could eat it, you'd have to parboil it through 3 waters. But it was wonderful. That wasn't free. You worked that out at 50 cents a day. Not 50 cents an hour, 50 cents a day. And the old right field, all the underground water, sewer, electrical was done by those guys with picking shovels during those awful winters when it went to 0 and 10 below. They were out there picking shovels, putting all that stuff in, 50 cents a day.
How old were you when you went through jump school?
21.
21?
I was one of the older ones.
Yeah, I was 18. My son was 20
Yeah.
when he went through. Tom, you went through about the same age as me, right?
19.
Yeah. I was 18.
Now, that's another thing. We went, prior to the time we went directly to jump school. 6,500 people signed up, and they didn't want any old Army people in it.
Right.
But in that time, from the middle of July until December, we went from 6,500 to 1,650 people.
Wow.
That's how tough it was. Anything at all, you were gone.
Courage is the chief characteristic of the paratrooper. But as well as courage, he's got to have stamina and a driving will to fight. It's this kind of soldier that makes up the Airborne Division and gives it the capability of carrying out decisive combat on any portion of the Earth's surface.
I wasn't going to go either. And I'll tell you why. I grew up and was living among World War I survivors, and a lot of them been gassed. And you go down the street in the summertime and hear them gasping for breath, and their bodies were burned from the gas. Didn't you want to be an aviator? I said, I never wanted to do that. Everybody wanted to fly. I said, you know what, an aviator is just a guy that takes you there. I said, look at the B-17, B-24.
Yeah.
The pilot takes them there. Those guys back there, and the waist gunners, they're the guys that take the beating. And they open that bomb bay door, it's 40 degrees out there, below 0. And there's a little walkway about a foot wide that they go back and forth on. There's no handrails. If they slip, they're gone. And they don't have parachutes on because they can't do their work
They
with
can't
a
get
parachute.
around. Yeah.
And yes, they have, the ones that the waist gunners have heated chutes. I said, you don't realize those quite often fail. And if the gun jams, the glove comes off and they're getting unjammed with their feet.
Why'd you volunteer to be a paratrooper?
Well, when I finally decided to go, that's a funny thing. There were two things I was interested in growing up. I'd seen a parachute jump in Bedford, Indiana, at a county fair. You see the old smoke jumper goes up and it turns upside down and all the smoke comes out. And I was more interested in submarines. I'd read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Momsen that came up with an escape capsule and all that. So I went down and signed up for it. And then I said to the guy, how long before I go? And he said, oh, about 6 months, and we'll keep in contact. They're building a sub that you're going to be on. And I thought, well, shit, after the fight I had with my boss, I wasn't going back and ask for
6 months. Right.
So I walked across the hall and signed up for paratroopers.
Oh, okay.
And that's how I got in. And I always tell people later, damn, I'm glad, because I didn't stop to realize in a submarine, there's no women. Of course, there are now. I realized that France and Britain were not going to survive unless somebody went over to help them. I said, that's another myth. We did not go over to save them. That's what everybody thought. We went over to help them. Because if they went down, we knew damn well Hitler was going to come over here eventually.
They're throwing 25 divisions at us. Our lines reel back.
The fighter planes going between us when we were flying over, and the ack-ack come out at us. But the thing I most remember was looking down there. I remember it was high cirrus clouds, and they have double summertime, you remember? And so at 11, instead of 1 hour, they have 2 hour delay. And at 11 o'clock, when we left England, you could still see and look down and see all those ships.
When you jumped into Normandy, what do you remember about that?
Well, that's funny because when the Martian area, everybody's all hopped up, gonna kill every goddamn German. And we went in there,
It's like us heading to Panama.
and there was a cloud bank that wasn't expected. Now our planes were flying in serials of 9, and they were so close together that some cut part of the tail off of one next to them. And another thing, In those 9 planes, only the first name had a Pathfinder. So when the cloud banking came out, the rest of them were done. Now they had Pathfinders all over Normandy. Each one of them had a transmitter called a Eureka, and it was done by Morse code, and I trained on them. The plane had a Rebecca receiver, and they were all on a different frequency, and that's why you were supposed to land where you were. Well, when that happened, it went to hell, and these pilots, they just looked down and saw a light and jumped people.
Turn on the light.
And that's why we're scattered the way we were. And of course, everybody's the hell about them scattering us. And I said, you got to realize what happened. And I said, some of these guys even went clear across the peninsula and went back to England. And they got back there and they had all the people. And I said, what the hell are you doing here? They said, we couldn't find a light. And I said, by God, you turn around and take them back or you're going to be court-martialed. And they did. These guys that flew us in there were guys mostly who were trying to be fighter pilots, and they washed out. And they put them in these planes to jump us. And that's how it happened. But the thing is, when I looked, of course, flew the doors off. Now, some of the planes were taken out of civilian service, and they had that one little door with a round top. Ours, with the later one, we had double doors.
Right.
And we were getting jumping, and then there's pallets here, and they're pushing supplies out. And they had what you call parapack underneath, like bombs. They weighed maybe several hundred pounds, and they'd have medicines, they'd have guns, or they'd have K rations, and each one had a 26-foot chute on, and the color of the chute denoted what was in it, so the people could take them where they went. And some of them had morphine in, thousands and thousands of. See, we went behind the lines, and all of us carried a little syringe of morphine and something else. I never, ever knew anybody that misused that.
Right.
Never. And look at it today. My son went to Vietnam in the 101st, and he said these guys claim that caused them to get into drugs. He said they were druggies before they went in.
Before they went.
Yeah, that's another thing. The Army we have today is like we were. They're all volunteers. You could be drafted in the Army, but you had to volunteer after you got in to be a paratrooper.
Be a paratrooper. Yeah.
And then one time in Normandy, there was a bombing went on, and one of the guys went out there and cut a steak off the cow, and he went out there the next day to get some more. And that cow was up walking around. So I said, I shot her.
So then he shot.
That's right. And they didn't have a skillet or anything, so they took some sand and washed up a shit shovel and used boot oil and fired the steaks. And then I said, well, how about all this parachute stuff? I said, yeah, I don't have to brag at all about it. I said, well, everyone knows we were in there to do the dirty work, and that's what we did. Certain people in almost every unit are known as killers. They enjoy killing. I never enjoyed that at all. And most of the time, I can't tell you who I killed or who I didn't. You go in, you're shooting at people. And I remember one time we were in the hedgerow country. And every time we took a little place, the Germans fell back. And I remember the officer saying, over the top. And I said, boy, That's just like World War I. And I said, you'd be surprised, all those damn machine guns, and you're going, how many people survived? And I said, you don't really think about it at the time, but after you do think about those things. And then, of course, we went to Paris on leave, and they wouldn't let paratroopers in the Red Cross.
They wouldn't?
No, they had one or two people around. So there was a lot of things went on.
Right.
But you learn to live with them.
Mm-hmm.
All the history books are written by the winners. And they always tell about bad things the enemy did. I said, when I lecture people and talk about it, I tell them about the bad things that we did. I said, we didn't do things like they did, but we did bad things too. Any enemy property we could keep. But again, a friendly country, you can't. Well, we don't know that was going on, but we were put there to guard it, see somebody didn't go in. And so what happened? We're living in those houses, and we're going through and looting things. They said we'd take enemy property, we figured they're enemy. And they didn't mean that, but nobody said anything, so we did it anyway. Mm-hmm. And then when they were coming across the bridge at Düsseldorf, they set up, and everybody came across had to have DDT, and they made women pull their dress up, pull their pants down, and spray them with DDT. And 5 or 6 guys went up to watch it. I said, what the hell are you going to see? You can't do anything, and look at those poor people. How do you think they feel up there looking at them? And then Roosevelt also ran this thing by executive privilege. And he said, you know, if I'd have gone through channels and gone to Congress, we wouldn't have got a damn thing done. And he said, I knew it was illegal, but nobody said anything, and that's why we did it. And I said, what about this Tennessee Valley thing and all that power dams and things you made? And he said, I told him, nobody's using that power right now, but I said, something's going to come up, we're going to need it. That's why the Manhattan Project went to Tennessee. Went into Holland. There was a white Negro outfit, 155s.
Mm-hmm.
They saved our ass.
Did they?
Yeah, I mean, those guys were damn good. And they didn't get the credit she got. Same with Bastogne. We got all the credit. And there were 16 different parts of 16 different units in there, and they're all put under the control the 101st. And they fought just like we did. And they didn't get the credit. And also, they were scheduled to go to Bastogne instead of us. And at the last minute, it got changed. I don't know why. But they had the northern half of that 60 miles, and we had the southern half. We landed at a place called Son, S-O-N. And then they blew the bridge, and so they put some planks across. And during the night, our unit went back to Eindhoven. But the second platoon, my platoon, was pulled out for security for the 101st Airborne. And of course, some captain came out and around and asked for volunteers to dig a foxhole for General Taylor. And I said, this is combat, tell him to dig his own damn foxhole. Well, he wanted to know who do it, and he didn't know us, so nobody said anything. And afterward I said, I can tell you one thing, I think I know a captain dug a foxhole that night. So we did go back there, and of course, the women who had collaborated with them, they stripped them, and a couple of them had babies, and they were on through our gauntlet and beat the hell out of them. And I said, you know, that was terrible. Some of them went willingly, but if they hadn't, those German officers took them anyway. They had no choice. And they, You know, my officers told them, you keep your mouth shut. You don't interfere no matter what happens. And then our planes came over and bombed the city, and several hundred people got killed from our bombs. And but then I talked to some of the people, and some of the bombs were duds. They were 250-pound bombs, and they had us picking them up and taking them, throwing them in the canal. And I said to the guys, they tell us to do things safe. What if one of those going off?
Goes off, right?
And people said, you know, we're still fishing those out of the canal after all those years. Would I go again under similar circumstances? I would. There is a special place in Cleveland for guys like you that have seen a lot of combat. And I said, well, you can do whatever you do, but I'm not asking for anything. And he filled them out, and about 10 days or a couple weeks later, it came back, and they gave me what was called a monthly thing called compensation for war injuries. And I laughed when Jack told me that. I said, I know what happened, Jack. And he said, what? I said, those guys up there that are doing this, giving us this compensation, they looked at my age, and they looked at where I'd been and what I'd done. They said, let's give this guy a good run. Shit, he's going to last a year or two. And I still think that's what happened.
Right.
Well, nobody can predict anything really, even 5 years ahead. Things are moving faster now than they did then.
Back then.
Because they have a base to build on. Now, people started out, they had to build their own base. Nobody had done something before. But now we do have a lot of that. And we have some of the smartest people in the world. Nobody knows. There's no way. Look at the change in the 4 years of World War II. Nobody dreamed of technological progress. Go in there and do the best you can. Be optimistic. Don't ever go in there with the idea that you're not going to win. That's what we're taught. No matter what the odds are, you're going to win, whether you do or not. You're going to hate the Army. And we did, because the intense training we had and the way we were treated. I said, look back on it now, it was really the best times of our lives.